with it. I'm game.
Okay.
This meeting is being recorded. Recording in progress. See what I mean? Pure academia. Anyway, no, I'm sorry to be so rude. By the way, at 30 minutes, will we receive an alarm that says, pay 10 shillings, pay 10 shillings?
No, because I have access to Zoom.
Okay, good. It
So-
reminds me of London in my student days, way back when you would have to, you remember maybe if you've been to London in the 70s,
Yes.
you'd shove the coins in like crazy to
Oh, yeah.
continue the phone call. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk. I have no idea whether we're being recorded. I will hold you personally
Yes.
responsible to take care of that. Should it end up at your place where you've got the recording, you'll have to send it to me or something, or what, I don't know. We'll find out. But let's do the chat before the interview, and then we'll do a little pause so that if there is a slice, we can do that.
Yeah.
Because I do have some questions. Let me see if I can find that now. Let's get rid of a couple things. I might lose us in all the stuff. No, there's that.
We
Okay.
can always come back.
No, there's no going back when it comes to Zoom. Once you're committed, that's it. It's done. You hang up and you're dead. No, I'm just being rude. I'm terrible. Okay. Am I being too loud, by the way?
No.
Okay. Okay.
We can adjust the volume anyway.
Well, now this is the what has me interested, and it's interesting, each time I talk with someone, especially in this context of one work. Sometimes the conversation can get into other pieces, or I get some kind of an idea of your other stuff, all that. But this one is huge. For starters, this piece is really huge, and it's very, very complex and extremely fascinating. And I have several little questions, and some of them may be very stupid about what I think I'm hearing. And by the way, I was a clarinetist.
Oh, really? I love the instrument. I really do.
Hang on. Ah, I hope this isn't lingering COVID. Hang on.
Oh, yeah.
It isn't digest, and that's a terrible jest. And what I had was just a week, sick for a week, back those weeks ago. Anyway, about that event, yeah, that was really something. But I admire the authorities. I'm jumping around a bit, but because we're not officially recording it, I admire the authorities because they, as I said, they locked everything down immediately, and they just essentially said, "Don't move, stay put."
Right.
Don't say, all that stuff that we read about. And then they meticulously interviewed every single one of us. I'm sure of it because it took forever. It was like eight hours. And I think that's really something. It blew my day completely,
Yeah.
but still,
yeah.
it's interesting.
It's
Anyway.
nerve-wracking to the extreme. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now let's see, where was I in terms of what I mean by that? We're just chatting, and then what we'll do is a pause, as I said earlier, and then we'll start. So it might, if I have to do a chop, it'll be easier. Usually, so in other words, I'm approaching this a little bit differently. I am curious about the time in Poland. I mean, I just just as backstory, it's so interesting with people who come to this country and pursue their advanced degrees, especially in the arts. I'm just curious, it's not like I'm looking for a civil war or anything, but I think it might be very interesting. And then it's not in my notes, but it's like, what? Because that is the most esoteric jazz piece
the title is fantasy jazz.
You got it, and that's my question. So it goes on. In other words, it's very complex and fascinating, and very, very interesting. It wasn't at all, I'm surprised and happy to say, what I was expecting. Because I was expecting, 15 minutes of, improvisation and very jazzy and everything. What I found, and we'll talk about it when we push record, was first of all, my question, so I don't make a fool of myself, that I love it's a question to me. Is this a concerto? Are those cadenzas before? I mean, the piece is I don't know what to call it. You'll tell us that when we go to record, how you conceive it. But I found it wonderful. And here's what I got from the two cadenzas. You will stop me in my tracks. I'm just talking about listening to it 2 or 3 times and taking copious notes, if you will, stream of consciousness notes. Is the first solo clarinet cadenza, if you will, that opens the piece, an homage to other excerpts from the past, great clarinet solos from the past, because I heard Scheherazade.
Really? No,
Well,
actually, no.
okay, thank you.
No.
So therefore, I will save my face on that one. But you know what I mean? I kept thinking, what is this? Maybe an because I heard little passages that I kind of remember from Scheherazade. You know. So thank you. Okay, that shot that question out the room.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. And well, anyway, I've got notes on the piece, but basically what I'm going to do is kind of introduce you. I'm going to ask you those couple of questions. Um, and then we're going to just look at the piece because it is it's so amazing, really. It's just absolutely virtuoso, and orchestration wise and everything else. And of course, very imaginative and a great performance.
Yeah,
The clarinetist is
the clarinet
superb.
is great. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
I cheated on his name because, hang on, I call him Samuel Marques because that O is Brazilian, I think.
Portuguese.
Portuguese, thank you.
Yeah.
Brazilian
Yeah.
Portuguese, I'm thinking, but I guess maybe he's authentic Portuguese. And I can never remember whether it's an N or an OW, San Paulo or Sao Paulo. So I thought I'd just leave it out. Okay, and the other thing is, are you Jazwinski or Jazwinski?
Well, here in this country, I'm Jazwinski. Actually,
I know jacaranda trees are also jacaranda trees in this country. That doesn't count. So it is Jazwinski.
actually, in the Polish pronunciation would be Jazwinski. So
Jazwinski. Oh my God, I love that. Jazwinski. How do I do that phonetically? And I'll have to race back to it, or I'll call you Jazwinski. But
Right.
Jazwinski, I was going to make a cute little thing about Jazwinski, and then the jazz that went out the window from the first notes.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a ja, right?
It's a J, Jazwinski. And in English, Jazwinski, Jazwinski.
Jazwinski. Okay, I think I'll just keep with what I figured out, and I'll just make it more. Okay, good. If I'm lucky, now I may fail. Okay, we'll go into a little bit of your bio. It's so wonderful that Navona has all of this available. None of the others really get anywhere close at the web, so people can go to the website, make all kinds of choices and read all this. But I'll go some of that. Yeah. And then I guess we'll just wing it and we'll start. I did not have time, I just saw it, to blacken, to highlight some of my remarks about the piece, so I'll have to kind of wade through it. But I have about 2 pages.
1 second, let me
Sure.
get rid of the buzz here.
Okay. I don't hear it at my end, but
I don't know what is happening here. Oh my goodness. I don't know what's going on today.
so you're hearing a buzz at your end, huh?
I'm sorry?
Are you hearing a buzz of some kind at your end?
A real buzz, very loud too, actually. Yes.
Well, this is the curse of being a composer, of course.
Yes.
Or being a musician.
Every buzz is extremely disturbing.
By the way, I just lost my focus. Oh, there it's coming back. But I must have gone too. Yeah, that's it.
Probably.
Okay. Yeah. We both know that we hear too much.
Yeah, I guess. Yes.
But I mean, I hear way more than anybody else hears, and it drives me crazy, but that's my profession,
Well, these days, most people are extremely visual, so we are different because of that. But
exactly.
I personally consider it a blessing.
What, that they're visual?
No, that I am very into listening.
Okay, thank you, because I am having my own life crisis in a way. And then I promise we're going to do the interview, but in a way, I'm now reaching that age where, and I'm a very happy, I'm a very progressive person, but I am really beginning to lose my faith in the core of my country, which was a good education. I'm very nervous about how stupid Americans are. And yet I know it's also so in many, many other countries, of course.
Unfortunately so, yes.
Yeah,
But
that's the
we're
thing. That's the
trying to
thing.
dumb things down to the
Ah,
point that
yeah,
sometimes I wonder what we are doing.
yeah. So it gets kind of depressing. You I thought mentioned basically that you feel kind of good in your space, and I feel kind of really lonely in my
Mm.
space, and I'm reaching that point where I'm kind of am almost despising the others, which is not correct at all. But I don't know what to do about this decline in education. Okay. All right. Well, on that optimistic note, let me get
Okay.
adjusted. I think it's time now. Who pushes? Oh, hang on. Let me see if I share screen, stop video. I have a
No,
feeling we have
it's
been.
recording all the time.
Okay, so now let's do a pause.
Okay. Now where does it?
No,
Okay.
I mean, don't push any buttons if it's recording.
No,
We're
I'm
fine. Let's
not
do it.
pushing. I have not recorded anything before, so I'm going to
Well,
have to
neither.
figure
That's
out
what
how to.
another reason I despise Zoom. But there you go. I think it says to me that that I could click it if I wanted to stop the video. So I think we're
Yes,
on. Okay,
yes.
so now get happy, get pleasant, get relaxed.
Okay, to the extent
We'll have a
possible.
pause of like 12 seconds.
Okay.
So crazy. It's your fault. Okay, that's all I have to say. Now let's begin. I am about to have, I think it's going to be very, very interesting, a wonderful interview with composer Barbara Jazwinski about her Fantasy on Jazz, which is a work that's on the 2023 Navona Records compilation CD, and they do a wonderful job with these compilation CDs. It's wonderful. It's called Symphonic Chronicles. This is volume one. There's already a volume two, I noticed. And in this case, Fantasy on Jazz is performed by the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. I was, I was there as a student, and hang on, I'm having a little trouble. David Watkin conducting,
Okay.
and Samuel Marquez, clarinetist. Wonderful, extraordinary, amazing performance. While we're there, do you have a little more information that you can give me about the both the conductor and the clarinetist? Anything, at all? I don't
Well,
want to put you on the spot or anything.
actually,
Because I
I
know how this
I
works.
met.
These orchestras are available for recordings, and sometimes you are able to go visit and whatnot, but sometimes you're somewhat an artist is somewhat disconnected from the recording process itself. So
I was able to talk to David Watkin once
yeah. Is he
before the
young? I keep
recording.
thinking he's young. Any idea? Can you tell us about him
I
as a
don't know
conductor?
how old he is.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. You were
Late 40s,
chatting. Yeah.
something like that. Right, right. But we've never met before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as Samuel, actually, I offered master classes at NYU and
Yes.
met a very talented student who actually performed my visions for clarinet solo before. So that's
That's a
that's
little more concrete connection, yeah? If
right,
I
right.
understood you correctly? Yeah,
Yes,
wonderful.
yes,
Well, all I
yes.
can say is, of course, the performance by the Royal Scottish National Symphony is just superb, and we're not talking easy. We'll get there. Uh, about your compositional prowess. Absolutely stunning, stunning writing, amazing, brilliant, fabulous, complex, very contemporary. It's not a crime, everybody, and we have, our people out there with at Performing Arts Review.net are professors and faculty members and professional musicians and so on. But you know what I'm saying? When there's real substance, that's what struck me right away. And we will talk about this piece, Fantasy on Jazz, and you have made it clear earlier, and I figured this was the bit fantasy, underline, underline, underline on jazz. And we'll chat about that. But anyway, the performance is fabulous, really fabulous, especially Samuel Marquez. And I listened for intonation. It was just fabulous. All the special effects that we'll talk about that he performed so masterfully. Okay, now Barbara Jazwinski studied composition and theory at the Chopin University of Music in Warsaw. I'm going to stop right now because we can get this one done and out of the way kind of thing. You're Polish born, you studied there, you of course came to the States and so on to have higher education and all that stuff in the arts. Tell me all about it.
Well, it actually happened the old-fashioned way. Yeah, I happened to get married to an American.
Oh, that's a very good way.
Okay. And we both ended up at Stanford. So
Nice,
my first degree, my master's degree is from Stanford, from California.
nice.
And later we moved to New York, and I studied with Mario Davidovsky.
Yeah,
And
and
at
Gergi
Stanford, I studied
Ligeti.
with Ligeti, with Georgi Ligeti.
Wow.
Um, so that's the way it happened. And after New York, we moved here to New Orleans. We've been here for quite a long time now.
Fabulous.
So,
I mean, really a fabulous story, I think. And also, Stanford doesn't come up very often. And all I can say as a Southern Californian is climate. Gorgeous. Stanford, gorgeous. I'm so glad
well,
to speak with
absolutely.
someone
Yes.
who
No,
has had that
I have
experience
I
in the
have
San
absolutely
Francisco.
wonderful memories from
Yeah.
California. Yeah.
Now tell me a little bit about spectri sonori.
Well,
Have I got that right? I mean, I don't get my Latin very well.
Spectri Sonora has existed
Sonori.
for a long time, and it's a concert series that's devoted to contemporary works. So
Yeah.
we've premiered, I don't know how many hundreds of pieces.
Since 1988. Yeah.
That's right. There've been an awful lot of pieces, and we are trying very hard to present different styles, to introduce our students to different compositional techniques, different ideas, different genres. I find it extremely important for the young people to get acquainted with the literature. And
Is
of
this a
course,
faculty ensemble or faculty student ensemble, the
no,
two?
these are members from the Louisiana Philharmonic.
Aha.
Yes, and of course our composition students also are featured on these
Sure.
programs, right?
Sure. Nice. Yeah,
So,
yeah, very important. And it
oh,
also
extremely so.
explain, and
Yeah,
by the way, it explains a lot about where we're going to go when we start talking about this. What is it? It's as I recall, 15, 16-minute long work. And I guess
yeah, it's almost 15 minutes.
yeah,
Yes.
and as I mentioned earlier, is it an orchestral piece with clarinet obbligato? Is it a clarinet concerto and so on? We'll get there. In fact, I guess we're almost ready to get there. Hang on, give me a second. What am I missing? Anything? Yeah, well, we're there actually, because I'm right at the question that says, how do you where do you place this work if you even need to? Is it a concerto? Is it an obbligato orchestral something something?
It's it's a fantasy. That really that's
Oh,
that
you always
the
escape to that, so to say.
best answer that I can give you. Um, the inspiration for this work came a while ago when I was in the French Quarter one day. It was um, very close to sunset. It was really
Mm,
lovely, beautiful colors,
mm,
uh, beautiful scent of the sweet olive, and it
mm.
was not crowded. It was
And the
quite
beautiful buildings,
different.
the antique buildings,
Right,
the surviving
right,
buildings, and
right.
so the whole thing about the
And
French Quarter.
it was not crowded at all.
Mhm.
So I felt basically surrounded by nature, and there's the river there, and suddenly I hear the clarinet. Okay, obviously when I hear music, I immediately start listening. And I don't know who was playing. It was not very close to me. I haven't seen that
Mm.
musician, but the sound carried very, very well. And it was a performance that was quite inspired. Really, improvisation. It was free. It was absolutely lovely. It was so incredibly New Orleans. And that actually made me think about writing a piece featuring these kinds of gestures, improvisational in nature,
And
but
thank you. That's very so well put. Yeah.
worked into fabric of a traditional symphony orchestra. And the reason for the two cadenzas is kind of precisely that, because I wanted to showcase the freedom. You know, the main character is the clarinet player. It's that clarinet player's dream. It's that player's story. And it's surrounded by orchestral gestures, ideas that kind of support it. But the main player is the clarinetist.
Let me jump in and see if I understood what you just said, because again, the end of the question was, is it a concerto? Is it an orchestral piece with solo obbligato, obbligati, I should say, with two? And I think you've just really beautifully described, well, first of all, it's extremely unique. That's a good answer. And as you also said, it is your fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And what else about it? What I was thinking when you were giving this description is, you know, there's kind of that classical thing. It's everybody knows there's the soloist in the orchestra and there's a narration, but more often than not, in, let's say in a concerto consequence and circumstance, and I'm being extremely broad, but there's almost a confrontation, you know, a narrative that gets into an argument and stuff. I didn't sense that in any way, and but you may correct me here. But what I did sense is what I thought you just described, which is kind of like this glorious. And I want to ask you if there are any ghost memories in those that solo soliloquy, if you will, that opens the concerto, and likewise again later. And then the orchestra with the clarinet dipping in and conversing. There's that
Sure.
conversation, but it's not a confrontational thing, which has also almost become a kind of classic idea of a concerto, that there has to be some kind of conflict between the two. Go, get me out of this.
The orchestra really provides harmonic support, and in very many situations actually clarifies certain gestures and ideas. But it's the soloist's vision, literally. And you know, when you're dealing with a fantasy, with quasi-improvisation type of thing, the form reflects that.
Explain a little bit. The form reflects the fantasy. Help me out here a little bit. I'm not quite sure I caught
you
you.
know, the form of the piece reflects the character of the piece. Okay, the character of the piece is very improvisation.
Of course. Yeah. No, okay, got you.
Right.
I'm not that dumb.
So improvisation, improvisational character cannot really be present. Well,
I think I'm on to what you're after here. Yeah.
Traditional stereotype form. Okay, I do realize that, you know, concerti have cadenzas, but this goes a little bit beyond that.
Yeah, it's quite different. I mean, you know,
It is different
it's an
because
odd word to use, but still really interesting.
yeah, because the cadenzas actually are very substantial within.
And it's almost, I think now it's almost a misnomer. These aren't two huge cadenzas. These are two independent solo improvised, if you will, solo soliloquies, and then the orchestral material into which the clarinet participates is kind of a whole new story, really. I mean, there are all kinds of other things going on during those orchestral with clarinets. Help me out of that one. Where am I going here?
Well, you know, I see a lot of connections between the two cadenzas. I call them cadenzas.
Oh, between the two cadenzas, yes.
Yes, there are definitely similarities.
I have been a little about my third listening, and I can't quite understand the narrative of the orchestral narrative.
Yes, I find it very interesting that you mentioned soliloquy. I actually wrote a piece for clarinet solo, you know, titled Soliloquy, and there is some similarity between that piece and the cadenzas in the fantasy.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
But, you know, again, think about the scene that I encountered, okay? That clarinet player reacting to the surroundings, as was I, right? So he was telling, they were telling a story, right? And that story had its own, it developed its own way, it has its own character, and well, that's the way I wanted it to sound in the piece. Sure.
And by the way, one of the several joys of living in Santa Barbara, little tourist city of Santa Barbara, that is so musical, with the Music Academy and so many other things going on, is there are improvisers go into the parking garages kind of on a regular basis, because the sounds from those various levels echo out over the whole of the main street of Santa Barbara. So I know exactly that sound where you hear this haunting, distant echo, and it's like a mockingbird in a way, what I hear usually in the
Right.
evening. And it only just occurred to me, but
that performer was an exceptionally gifted performer. Okay? You could tell that that this person was extremely well trained, reacted to all kinds of different stimuli and different.
Are you speaking of Samuel Marquez? That
No,
performer for you?
no.
Oh,
I'm
I was
talking
wondering.
about
Oh, you mean the performer in New Orleans?
in
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get that
yes,
clear.
in New Orleans.
Okay, I
Yes,
wanted to get that
yes.
clear because it is.
Samuel actually intuitively understood my music,
Yeah,
which I
exactly.
found really interesting. A friend of mine from a phenomenal clarinetist, Esther Lomneck, actually taught him as well. And she told me about the super gifted young man in her ensemble, who had the ability to understand very complex musical styles and was able to perform classical and jazz works in the contemporary repertoire, and with an enormous degree of musicality and actually flexibility and understanding of the styles.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Because
So
I'm square. I mean, my training was conservatory, or as square as it could be. I loathed the Beatles at the time. Of course, I was an idiot too. But you know what I mean. I envy these young musicians. Brilliant. It's commonplace now that they just dip into everything and love all of it. It's
yeah, so
amazing, and it's good. It's all good.
when Esther asked him to perform my visions, I did not even have a chance to hear that piece until the concert. And basically everything was done exactly the way I intended. So there was some sort of
That's a high compliment. When they intuit
communication.
exactly where you were coming from. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Right.
So we didn't really have a chance to practice the fantasy together or anything like that. We had a meeting before the recording for about an hour.
I understand, yeah, how that works. Yes, exactly. Yep.
Through the piece,
Yep.
but I felt that he understood very well what I wanted him to do and vice versa. So
And it's about being
we were
thoroughly
able to
prepared.
communicate very, very well.
Yeah, and
And
it is about being thoroughly prepared, and
yeah,
that's the beauty of these orchestras and soloists that Parma,
right.
acquires for these recordings. Well, of course, Scottish National Orchestra and so on. But these are wonderfully prepared artists. The orchestra, that orchestral material is, I don't have to tell you, extremely difficult, and all kinds of subtle stuff going on all over the place. Nailed it as far as I could tell.
Well, the most difficult issue in that piece is the tempo, which really needs to be rubato. Basically, that's true of just about every work that I write. I like those languid rhythms. I like the rhythmic flexibility.
Polish.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of help. You know who I mean? The
Yeah.
Symphony Number 3. He's Polish. I can't remember his name. I've told.
Goretzky.
Huh?
You're talking about Goretzky.
Yes,
Yeah.
Goretzky, and I saw him conduct Symphony Number
Mhm.
3 with the
Right.
College Orchestra
Right.
USC and rehearsals and so on. And he, I mean, I'm not. It's apples and oranges is
Mhm.
completely, but
Mhm.
it's so interesting when to have an understanding that slower allows something greater absorption, greater concentration. Goretzky kept saying, "No, slower, slower, slower. You're missing everything." You know, it's so anyway.
Well, considering the fact that people really are not very good at, precise, at being able to precisely tell, time, that makes sense. We're not very good
That's
at that. We,
well,
even
that's
we,
very interesting. I'm
well,
gonna,
try counting in precise interval, the
oh yeah,
interval of a
yeah.
second, and
I don't want to go there. It
within a very
reminds me
short
of
period
my
of
conducting
time.
training.
Yeah.
It
So,
reminds me of
so
my conducting training.
right,
Terrible,
right.
awful.
So I feel that the ability to construct a phrase that has a beginning and the end, and the ability to actually understand how to pace yourself through the piece is fundamental. I try to do my share as a conductor, as a composer, and I'm very grateful when conductors actually go forward with that
Uh-huh.
and shape.
Oh, well,
Right.
that's just everything you just said is full of juicy possibilities and
Really.
and questions. Um, because I know composers and you've just expressed very well what most don't speak to because a lot and many times they say, oh, whatever is perceived by et cetera, they get out of it very carefully. But I think in just to kind of refocus on this piece, the orchestral writing, there is no room for error, as far as I can tell from the way you've written this music. Help me. Am I close? Am I off? You know
Well,
what I'm
I
saying?
tried very hard to make it as clear as I possibly
Of course.
could, right?
Sure.
But
It
still,
had to be very
right,
clear because it's so
but still,
complex,
right, but
you
but
know?
still, there is a soloist and there is an ensemble,
Yeah.
and the conductor has to make sure that everybody's on the same
Yeah,
page,
yeah. But you
right?
know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Your orchestration's amazing. There are little bits and pieces. I've got it all in my notes somewhere here. Little bits and pieces of color that really surprised me. Little things that happen. I'm trying to get with that. The percussive metal thing, percussion instrument help. I'll look it up later and stuff. Little bits and pieces, and then also how you maneuver. Speaking of meter, maneuver moods.
Mhm.
And yet, I think you've just said earlier, and it's absolutely basic, the arc, has to be complete.
Oh
And
yeah, oh yeah. The,
absolutely.
the the cadences between phrases. I mean, if you
Yeah.
tell a story, that the story has to move in a certain direction, it has to move at a certain speed, and sometimes the pauses need to be longer, sometimes shorter, but it moves through time in a very specific way, and it has to be controlled by the conductor, who did, by the way, a great job with that piece, I felt.
Okay, wonderful. And may I just pass the compliment back to you because presumably you indicated everything very clearly because it would have to be. Things would have to be indicated very, very clearly.
I
I don't
tried,
just,
but
what?
I
Say?
tried, but then I'm not a conductor, so I can't speak to to the
Well, I
class.
am, and I can speak to that, which is that
Okay.
what I heard was,
Mm,
and this is part of the fun of the piece too. Fun is a stupid word, but kind of the fun of the idea of the piece, which is we've talked about improvisation, the
mhm.
inspiration, from the echoing solo clarinet in New Orleans and everything. So we have that in those two beautiful, free flowing, and of course, very, very precisely written. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I just needed to
Everything
double
is very
check. No
precisely written.
improvisation there,
Yeah.
but the improvisation is in the writing, in the way you're,
Correct.
uh, and then there are these extremely just really deep and profound orchestral. There's a whole other journey with the orchestra. And as I have said repeatedly, with the clarinet kind of dipping in, it's not this adversarial thing. It's kind of like a little comment here, a little collar there, or something. Nothing like a confrontation between the two. While the orchestra has its own journey, which reminds me about narratives. Oh, I'm going to put you on the spot, but and I don't need to, but in a way I'm putting you on the spot because narrative implies a story. What is the orchestra's story? Is that a dumb question? Is there a story to what the orchestra plays? And the reason I ask it is not just to, put you on the spot or anything, but I heard 2 or 3 different tales, different segments, different stories.
I will leave that to the interpretation of the listeners.
Oh, that's always how they get out of it.
There's always a story, okay? But there's stories that will be shared and others that will not.
Okay. So it's not Help, the one with the pumpkin and it's not the wild ride of somebody or other. No, it's not that specific, but obviously it's narrative. Let me just have a look. I do this stream of consciousness
and
stuff.
Perhaps the story is not the perfect word to describe this, because as you mentioned before, the piece deals with emotions a great deal. Okay. Various emotional responses and color and textures are profoundly important in that piece. So basically there are certain gestures that are interpreted in various ways during the course of the piece.
Thank you. You just told me the story. Thanks very much. That helps a lot, because now we're going to talk about what I heard, from what I'm thinking. Let me just try and find some things. Hang on, I didn't underline stuff particularly. But I'm trying to find what we were I'm trying to get to the orchestral narratives. Well, of course, and by the way, the clarinetist, you write in so many and what I mean by charming is they're bloody difficult, but they're so wonderful to the color. The overtones, the double pitch overtones. I'm sure there's a name for that. All that good stuff.
Yeah, I like multiphonics very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and
of course, one has to be very careful with it because
very dangerous. I would think
they can be. So I work very hard to make sure that they are dependable, let's put it this way.
Oh, very well put. Very well put.
Yeah.
So now there's the practicality of a composer speaking.
Well,
so often the public will say, "Oh, you put in all these special effects." No, and all that stuff, but you a real composer makes sure these things happen.
If they happen half of the time, what's the point, right? I mean, and also there's a huge difference between live performance and a recording session where you can repeat certain things. But this piece was specifically written for live performance. Okay, this was not a premiere of that.
Oh, no, yeah, I see.
So it was written for a live performance. So I had to make sure that the multiphonics had a chance.
Yeah,
they had a fighting chance. Yes.
Let's see. Let me just give everybody an idea of my sort of what my ear and mind was hearing, just to give you an idea of again in terms of this this narrative, this orchestral narrative, and so on. There's this clarinet and orchestra section that is pure, thick, rich, complex. This is about kind of in the first quarter, I guess, just getting into the piece, kind of, or not in the very beginning, but as it's starting to get juicy. Complex hints at European jazz temperament with a question mark. I had no idea what I wrote, what that was about. Does that ring any bell at all? Well, maybe the New Orleans, I don't know, French something. I don't know.
Well, look.
You don't have to make excuses.
Wherever people live, they absorb what surrounds them. So
thank you. So
I've been in many places. Certainly, Polish music is of profound.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You carry on. You're helping me. You're
right. But New Orleans has been a very important influence in my life as well. Extremely so. But of course, I am absorbing these influences in my way. I mean,
Of course.
I am who I am, so
There you go. Powerful stuff, I say. I'm in like the first third of the piece. Now a rather sultry uh, section. I know you have no idea where I am, nor do I. These are just my instrument. More sultry in my mind, kind of feel as the piece. Oh, this is the end. This is the ending. Remember how it gets all exciting and then it kind of, in my mind, kind of did a kind of little sultry something or other. I wouldn't have used that word, and then it kind of dies and is out. Yeah. Speak to that. The ending of the piece is marvelous. Go ahead. Tell me how that was engineered.
Yeah.
Let's say the last few minutes,
Yeah, yes. I always try to remind the listeners that New Orleans has an infinite variety of musical styles. Because in very many cases, people kind of connect New Orleans to a very specific kind of jazz. But that's not the way it is. I mean, this in New Orleans, this is live music. This is what happens now. It's new, it's original. I remember listening to performances of the Marsalis family, you know. I mean, these are different sounds. Of course, they connect with the past, but they go forward. They are experimental. They are different. They are just stylistically diverse, right? And this is natural because music evolves. And uh, I remember comments of a very well-known musician at one of the performances uh, by Marsalis. He looked at me and he said, "This is jazz." I mean, he was incredulous. Yes, this is jazz. That's exactly right. Because there's an infinite variety of different styles, techniques, everything. This
I was gonna,
I
and
value.
virtuosity and virtuosity.
Yeah, this is what I value so much about this culture. It's live. It happens now, right? So the sky is the limit, as far as I'm concerned. You can listen to so many different approaches
You
to
sound like your
music.
students. I'm going to have to go soak my head in cold water and take some showers and decide to lighten up more. I thought I had lightened up pretty much, but I'm still square as they come. Anyway. Well, what I mean, let's kind of wind it down in that we've kind of done a bit of an overview of this piece. Of course, our interview will be up at performingartsreview.net, and I'll write the review next cycle as I come back around to it, and that'll give me a time to let this kind of soak in and see if I can come up with a good, solid, uh, um, review of this 17, 18-minute work. It's a big, major piece, I think, and very, very interesting. The structure is quite unique, as we've discussed. The role of the, if you will, soloist, for lack of another word, it's much more complex than that. This relationship between the orchestra and the solo clarinet, it's just not orchestra solo. It's something. It's more organic, maybe, the way you have.
Yes, actually, it is the right word. Yes. Very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Yeah,
It just came to me, and I think that's
yeah,
it. The way that clarinet
yeah.
uh, has, as you said, those two soliloquies, if you will, solo soliloquies, are cadenzas because they're gorgeous and complicated, and then the way the clarinet dips into the narrative, the orchestral narrative. It's not like they're separate; they're all
No, oh
blended
no,
together.
no,
Absolutely, I don't want
no,
people to get that the wrong idea.
no.
Anyway, it's a wonderful idea, fabulous piece, and let's just speak a little bit in winding it down about difficulty in preparation. I think you may have indicated that this has been performed by a like college level orchestra and soloists or something. How'd that work?
It was performed in Europe, in Romania, actually, for
Uh-huh.
the first time. Yeah,
Okay, by an professional orchestra in Romania.
my friend Esther Lomnek and the Romanian symphony orchestra.
I guess my question is it how difficult would you say the orchestra? I'm really the orchestral part. I'm not worried at all. It's just it's so necessary that it be correct. How do you have any idea? It's a terrible question to ask.
They didn't have any difficulty, really.
Okay, thank you. Well, that answered.
It's actually, I don't recall a single situation where there would be, a problem lining things up or anything like that.
Okay. That's what I needed to know because it's a rich, big, thick, complex, contrapuntal, right, left, and center. I'm speaking of the big orchestral parts, and I just, kind of wanted to ask if it is a difficult piece of work to put together. And you were saying,
no, not
okay.
Really. No.
Good. Okay,
No,
good.
I think that it is phenomenally important for the soloist to have an understanding of jazz and also classical training, because it's both, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's a virtuoso clarinet piece for sure.
You're right. But as far as the ensemble and how everything lines up together, I've never encountered any problem with that. The piece also exists actually in the clarinet and piano version, and it was performed very, very much. Yeah,
Wow.
oh yeah.
I mean, as an orchestra guy, suddenly my radar just went way up about what? There's a piano reduction of that enormous orchestral piece? Wow. Part of it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, well,
Good.
where it was very practical because
Yeah, of course.
Because I mean, how many orchestral performances can one
That's right.
reasonably
No.
count on? And because of the transcription for piano of the piece.
Yeah. And you're in good company. Everybody else does that since the beginning of trying to make a living in music, Well, I guess we'd better stop and then we'll figure out how to turn this thing off here. But what a wonderful chat. Thank you very much for putting up with disasters and setups. When we're done, I have a question to ask you, a personal question. But what a wonderful interview with composer Barbara Jazwinski. Thank you for giving me some hint at how to pronounce your last name a little bit properly in Polish, about your fantasy on jazz, which is just so wide open and people just don't have any idea the deep dive they're going to take on this piece. Fantasy on Jazz, which is on part of the 2023 Navona Records compilation CD. It's called Symphonic Chronicles, Volume 1, and I'll put all that information up on how to get people there to, so where they can hear the piece and buy some tracks and all that good stuff. Barbara, many, many thanks. I hope we've covered pretty much all the territory of that piece. Great pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, now what do we do? Let's see. I guess I can quit it maybe. Share.